Let's begin history. Yesterday we talked about the three branches of government. We talked about the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Now I know those were terms that we didn't exactly learn in the reading, but we talked about each one and what each one's job was. Which person sees that the laws are obeyed, he enforces the laws. The person who sees that the laws are obeyed or enforces the law is the president. He has the power to see the laws are obeyed. Okay, so this is the president. Which one judges whether the Constitution has been obeyed? The person who judges whether the Constitution has been obeyed is the Supreme Court. And that's also the highest court in the land. Now, we talked about there are the legislative branch, and they're the people that make the laws. What was that group, the specific group that we says makes the laws? That is Congress. And Congress is divided up into two houses. Which house has two per state no matter what? Two per state no matter what. This is the Senate. The Senate. And which one has the amount of representatives depending on the size of the house? The House of Representatives. Yes. Okay, so you have your two houses. House of Representatives, which the amount depends on the amount of representatives, okay? So that is always shifts, and then the Senate has two. When each state signed the Constitution, what did they give up? What power did they give up? The power to completely govern themselves. All right, so make sure that as we are reading those that you can remember which branch does which job and different things, because that you will be responsible for knowing those for the government. All right, we're going to go to page 125. We're going to be finishing the chapter. We're going to be talking about the Bill of Rights today. And we're going to be talking about Benjamin Banneker. I don't know if you remember him. Now, we have the Constitution, right? This is the plan of government that we still follow today. And to the Constitution, we added a group of things to the Constitution called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights. And we actually will be reading and memorizing one of them, the First Amendment, or the Article 1 to the Bill of Rights. This was added to the Constitution to protect freedoms of individual people. This is called the Bill of Rights, and it's a list of our rights or freedoms. The right to bear arms, the right to peaceably assemble, the right to freedom of speech, the freedom of the press. These are all very important additions to the Constitution, and this is called the Bill of Rights. All right, so we're going to go on page 25 and start reading. The people of the United States knew from the very beginning that it was important to make sure that no government, even our own government, could take away the freedoms that God has given us. Highlight this: to protect the freedom of individuals and groups, they added a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. So in addition to the Constitution, they added another place called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is a list of people's rights or freedoms. The Bill of Rights forbids the federal government from taking these freedoms from us. The Bill of Rights includes the right to print and read what we want within certain limits. It also includes the right for someone accused of a crime to be tried by a court of law. So let's say you were wrongfully accused of something. There's a law, a Bill of Rights, that protects you so that you're not just thrown in jail forever, but that you need to be tried in a court. Not every country has that, so we're very fortunate. Now, the new government could not interfere in these areas. The Bill of Rights also protected the states and their powers from being overtaken by a new government. Americans believed it was wise not to give too much power to any one person or group, or even to the government. Remember, because they just came from England where they were taken advantage of, and that's where we came with the War for Independence. So now they're making sure that instead of just one person having the power, that they're going to split it up, almost like a triangle or a split of power, okay? And each one checks and balances each other. Now, the Bill of Rights is written in the form of 10 amendments or changes to the Constitution. The First Amendment is especially important, and we'll be saying that as a class. It guarantees us freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly. So it says, Congress shall make no law prohibiting or respecting the establishment of a religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This is our First Amendment. The Bill of Rights protects the rights and freedoms of all Americans. Now, it has been said that as Benjamin Franklin left the Constitutional Convention, a woman walked to him and said, "Hey, what kind of government has been formed?" And his thoughtful answer was, "A republic, if you can keep it." And we're on top of page 126, so make sure you highlight that because that's important. A republic, if you can keep it. What did Benjamin Franklin mean by this statement? Well, a republic, highlight republic, is a government run by representatives of the people. Franklin knew that it was dangerous for only one man to rule a country. Like King George III, that wasn't a great situation. We want to make sure that even though we have one president, that we have a bunch of different people to check and balance him. So yet never before in history had any country as large as ours try to have self-government. The Constitutional Convention had worked hard to plan a government in which our president could not rule like a king. A republic is also a government in which no particular group has all the power. It's fair, it's split up, it's even, we're not giving one person this ultimate authority and power because we don't want them to take advantage of that. What if we put in a bad leader and then you're in a very bad situation? Well, he knew that in self-government, the people can sometimes act like a harsh king. We are fortunate that the Constitution guards against this. America has so far kept the Republican government set up by the Constitution. May we as Americans never let our government take away the freedoms that we are guaranteed to us by our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Now let's talk about an election. Okay? Now there is another decision to make. Who would be the first president of the United States? Well, duh, they all knew. This is not a hard decision. The man who had led our country through the War for Independence, and also he was in the French and Indian War, George Washington, highlight, he's our first president, and John Adams was our first vice president. John Adams was the first vice president, and he was also the second. So you have Washington, Adams. Now, after being elected, Washington traveled in a horse-drawn coach to our nation's first capital. Highlight this. Our nation's first capital was not Washington, D.C. Our first capital was New York. You think about it, if you have the 13 original colonies, New York's in a really important spot, right? So New York was our first capital. Washington, D.C. did not exist yet. So unfortunately, George Washington wasn't in Washington, D.C. because it didn't exist at the time. People crowded the roads that George Washington's coach traveled. All along the way, he was met by cheering crowds. Little girls threw flowers in his path. Guns were fired to salute the President of the United States. And we call this Inauguration Day. Kind of like it's Coronation Day, but it's Inauguration Day. You can highlight that. On the first Inauguration Day, Washington asked that a Bible be brought to him. With his hand resting on the Word of God, Washington took the oath of office. Now, we still have Inauguration Day, and it's in January. We elect a president, like we just had our elections back in a couple weeks ago, but we have Inauguration Day where we are the president is sworn into office? Well, with his hand resting on the Bible, Washington took the oath of office. Washington set a good example that day, and all the presidents since have been sworn in on a Bible. George Washington was a good president. He was well aware as the first president that he would be setting an example for all the presidents who would come after him. Therefore, all his official actions were done carefully, cautiously, and thoughtfully. Because he set such a good example, Washington is regarded by historians as one of the greatest of all presidents. He served his first term of 4 years so well that the people elected him for a second term. When it came time for the third election, the people wanted to elect him again, but this time he refused. So he actually set a precedent of only being in office 2 terms, and remember, a term is 4 years. So he was in office for 8 years, but he declined to be in there for a third time, which would have been 12 years. He and his wife Martha returned to their beautiful plantation farm, Mount Vernon in Virginia Highlight. Before he left office, Washington wrote a long farewell address. In the address, he thanked the people of America for voting for him and for allowing him to serve his country as president for 8 years. Then he warned the people that unless they acted like responsible citizens, the freedom for which they had fought so hard for might disappear. He told them that respect for and obedience to the nation's laws are vitally important. He warned people that loyalty to their country should never be replaced by a loyalty to a political party. And sometimes people today forget that. We want the best for America as a whole, but sometimes people can get so divisive and argumentative in their own political party that they tend to forget about the country as a whole. He urged people from the north, the south, the east, and the west not to think about what would be good for the part of the country, but for the whole country. And above all, he stressed that his new government could only work only in an atmosphere of strong morality, doing right according to God's laws. He said that morality would result only when religion held its proper place in the lives of its citizens. A short time after writing this address, Washington retired to his home in Mount Vernon. Honest, hardworking John Adams took his place and became the second president of the United States. Okay, who was elected first president of our country? It was George Washington. What do we call the day on which a new president is sworn into office? Inauguration Day, yes. And what was the first capital of our country? It was New York. And who became the second president of our country? It was John Adams. All right, now we're going to keep reading. A new capital. You will remember that our nation's first capital was New York. Soon plans were made to build a new capital. Highlight his name, Benjamin Banneker, the first Black American to write a scientific book, helped to plan the new city. Both Virginia and Maryland gave land to build the city on the banks of the Potomac River. Although George Washington never lived there, the city was named Washington in his honor. The land that the city was built on is called the District of Columbia. That's where we get the D and the C. It is District of Columbia. So Washington, District of Columbia. So that's how we get the name Washington, D.C. All right, what famous Black American helped to plan our nation's capital? Benjamin Banneker. Benjamin Banneker. And what does D.C. stand for in the name Washington, D.C.? District of Columbia. And did Washington ever get to live in Washington, D.C.? No, he did not, because it did not even exist yet. Well, guys, we finished our chapter. When we come back from Thanksgiving break, we'll start studying this for a test. But I hope that you guys are paying attention and learning something from our branches of government. I will see you next time. Have a great break. Love you. Bye.